A few months back, I visited Europe with my wife and enjoyed for a little bit. However, I've been to Europe many times and I noticed, let's just say things seem to be getting a little worse in Europe. So let's talk about that in this video. I'd like to start off talking about the environment and living environment. So I've visited Europe many times and in the past, it felt cleaner. I don't know how to say it in a different way, but like the streets were cleaner. They didn't have any grime on them. There wasn't as much graffiti around, and before I felt like people weren't smoking as much. Maybe they were always smoking, but I didn't encounter as much. But this last time going to the EU, me and my wife don't really like smoking much. We don't like being around smoke. That's what I mean. We don't smoke, but we don't like being around it. Either secondhand smoke, it doesn't feel good. It's not nice. It doesn't smell nice. So we found when we were in Europe a few months back, we were constantly having to basically run in the street because there would be so many people smoking. We would just have to run past cafes. You couldn't go to most cafes. And this was especially bad in certain countries. Like Bosnia, it had really nice like nature and parks. However, if you tried to go to a cafe, every cafe, people were even smoking inside the cafe. The non-smoking area still smelled like smoke. I don't know, it was just disgusting. I don't know how to put it any differently than that. This was also true in many other European countries as well. I won't go into detail of all the places we went, but yeah, let's just say the living environment has got much worse, it feels like, in terms of the living conditions, the public infrastructure especially dirtier, more graffiti, more grime. So like, it's just like they're not maintaining it as well, or people just don't care as much, or they don't have the pride about their country, their city. And then of course, like I said, the smoking. It affects the living environment a lot. You can't just go out on a peaceful walk as much without just running into people smoking and just unpleasant things. Let's say that, trash, smoking. So yeah, the living environment seems to be getting worse in my. And similar to the living environment, I feel like your safety in Europe's getting worse. Like before, I felt very safe. I don't feel too unsafe now, but it's clear safety has taken a toll in Europe over the last few years especially. There's more strange people, there's more deranged people, there's more people acting weird, there's more, like there just isn't the social harmony there used to be in Europe. It seems like the social contract has kind of like been burned, people are more up to crime, there's more pickpockets. In Europe, most places felt like there's tension in the air other than like rural countryside type of places, or like Albania. Albania, I went there multiple times, stayed there I think like over 7 months or 9 months, something like this in my life, and they don't have this issue. But most of Europe seems to be having this issue now. And it feels like it affects your safety, as well as, like I met many people in Europe when I was there. Different friends I met from around the world before, and they were, like, one of the reasons I'm making this video is we talked about some of these topics, and they described how Europe pretty much is getting worse. They described how there was much more crime, how before they weren't really concerned with going out late at night, now they wouldn't walk late at night in many areas of the city, or even at all, especially alone. So yeah, those things weren't an issue before, they've kind of become an issue. So this is another element where Europe seems to be getting kind of worse. Another thing those people mentioned were the taxes. So taxes in Europe are always quite high, however, there's a lot of fear with what they said, or a lot of concern rather, that the taxes are going up and they're becoming more burdensome. So I'm not a EU tax expert, so I can't really like go into great detail about all of this. I don't really care about EU taxes too much. To me, they're too high, just leave if they bother you. But yeah, they were saying they were getting worse, they're getting more restrictive, and I have heard about like France and other EU countries like raising their taxes and planning to raise their taxes, impose wealth taxes, all sorts of stuff like this, even impose like global taxation. They've been talking about more in some of the parliament. So yeah, with that being said, basically taxes are getting worse in Europe too, which is just another thing that's going to be pushing people with money, people with capital, people with access and opportunity elsewhere. And this is one of the reasons like EU GDP per capita and stuff like this still is not going up substantially, is because there's such a big brain drain on Europe, which is probably affecting a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about in the video, have been talking about. A lot of the brain drain, people see these high taxes, they see the crime, they see this other stuff, they decide, you know what, screw it, I'm leaving, I'm going to another country, and then you have one less productive, wealthy member of society that really contributes more. It's all linked. But yeah, let's move on. The next thing I'd like to talk about, also that they talked about to me and we discussed, is the living expenses in the EU, just broadly in the EU, but also in Europe broadly, like even non-EU countries. The living expenses is just, when I was there in 2020, 2021, the living expenses were fine. When I was there before, it was even better. I don't know what happened in the last few years. I knew Europe had some inflation, but I mean, prices are up to a ridiculous extent. Some of the food stuff's not too bad at the grocery store and stuff like this, but restaurant prices seem to be up like at least 50%. Housing prices are up at least, to me, especially short-term housing, are up like 50 to 100% or more, especially if you want a quality place. So yeah, I don't know, the living expenses are up. They don't really affect me too much, but it is something where you notice it. And when all these other things have got worse, the relative value isn't there. Like I invest a lot, I'm an investor, it's how I make most of my money, and relative value is an important term. It's about what are you getting and what are your potential rewards or benefits relative to the risk. And the relative value in the EU and Europe broadly, just, it doesn't feel there. Like you're paying way more, but you're getting a way worse experience and service. So yeah, I was kind of disappointed going to Europe a few months ago. Let's just say that. But yeah, the living expenses are much higher, the electricity costs are higher, the food costs are higher, and you're just not getting the same quality of service either. Like the quality of service is just, it feels lower. I won't go too much into detail, but it feels lower. It feels like Europe's service, it was always kind of slow, relaxed, peaceful. It still kind of is. However, people seem ruder, like more aggressive. I don't know what it is, but yeah, maybe it's regarding the social tension in the air, stuff like this, but yeah, let's move on. Next thing I'd like to talk about is like food and access to goods. So Europe and the EU, like they never had too good of access to goods in my opinion, especially like non-food goods. You couldn't, like you can order things online, especially in countries like Germany, and kind of get it delivered and all of this, but the access just isn't comparable to places like the US, Thailand, or China. I'm not really sure exactly why, because Europe's quite wealthy, they should be able to have access to a lot of goods, but I don't know, my experience was I couldn't even buy, like I needed some new shoes, I wanted to get a specific hiking backpack, and I just couldn't even get it there. I had to go to like different specialty shops in person, they didn't even have what I was looking for, and it's not the same level of access to goods, it's not as convenient as other countries. You can't just order things online, get it efficiently delivered in a few days for little cost or free, and eventually when I ended up finding what I was looking for, it took a lot of work, many hours, and had to go to many different places. And when I eventually found it, it was like 30-40% higher in price than anywhere else in the world I've seen it. So yeah, maybe it's just because the market's not as efficient, or they have import tariffs that are high. Yeah, it's something that bothers me, and one reason why I wouldn't want to actually live in the EU, and why I wouldn't want to be there long term. But in terms of food, they have quite good access to food in the like grocery stores and stuff like this. The fruits, vegetables are quite good quality actually. Better than the US, better than a lot of countries. As well as they have good like other products in the grocery store. So that's actually pretty good in the EU. It's pretty good in Europe. The prices are a little high for what you're getting, but the quality is there. The quality is pretty good, so I don't mind it too much. But wrapping this all up, I'd also like to briefly touch on like the airline situation. So when you fly in between these countries, the airports seem to be much more of a mess now. Much busier, much dirtier, much less efficient. The planes seem packed with people, and I don't know, it's just not as comfortable of an experience. I don't know how to put it exactly, but you know, anyhow, to wrap all this up, I feel like life in the EU is getting worse. It's the people I know who live in the EU have like shared this sentiment with me. It's a nice place to visit, but a lot of them are even considering moving back out of the EU. So they move back for family or other reasons, and they're considering, basically have decided they're going to be moving to either South America or Asia, and just going to be visiting the EU or Europe maybe 1, 2, 3 months a year when the weather's nice, and enjoying themselves, seeing friends, family, and that's it. They're just finished with it. And if I was from the EU or Europe, I'd probably be doing the same, because life there just seems to be getting worse. I don't know, it's just a combination of so many factors here that it's hard to really blame one thing. But the lifestyle in the EU just isn't, it's just not as good as it used to be. I mean, the direction of the EU and Europe broadly just, it isn't as good. Before, you didn't have these concerns about an expanding war, you didn't have these like issues regarding millions of refugees coming in, you didn't have any social tension, The economy was much better, things were cleaner, things were nicer, people were less stressed out. Everything was much nicer before, and things just seem to slowly be getting worse. The energy prices are up because of the war and conflict. Like, this is probably what's causing people to stress out and people to skimp on other things, take less pride in their city and their civilization, and just, what does the future of the EU really look like? Like, let's be honest here. Is it good? They're spending too much money, just like the US. They're spending way too much money on debt, is what I mean. They're letting in tons of refugees in. They're changing the culture. They're changing the social dynamics and behaviors in the country. They're changing everything about the region. And things are just getting worse, more expensive. Like, what is the future of the EU here? There's brain drain. People are leaving already. They're raising taxes. They're trying to capture a lot of these people who are leaving. The future doesn't seem bright. Let's just say that. And it's why I kind of feel like even if someone moved to the EU, even if you got, like, say, a Portugal golden visa, like one of the people I met with and talked with when we visited the EU, I feel like it's time to leave. Like, that guy, I met him in, I think it was 2019 in Thailand. We worked, like, side by side more or less for about a year building a business. Basically, he made it really good eventually, a couple years later. And he did the Portugal golden visa. He's been living there. He has this really nice villa. His life's really great, honestly. Got married, all of this. But he's found he doesn't even really leave the villa much. He only goes on short vacation trips to, like, small towns in Europe. Gets a car and just basically keeps to himself and his family. And it's just the lifestyle there, he said, and the living expenses, it's just all gotten worse. And, like, he's considering moving to Argentina right now. But yeah, that's going to be all for your video. If you have any, like, thoughts or questions regarding any of this, or you want to share your experiences, feel free to leave those down below. With that being said, bye bye.